The Great Gatsby is a classic novel with many different themes, but in today's video we're going to focus on the four major themes: love and obsession, dissatisfaction and idealization, social class struggles and differences, and loneliness and isolation. Each of these themes can be directly portrayed through four main characters. The first theme, love and obsession, is directly in sync with the character of Jay Gatsby. Jay Gatsby was a poor man who was madly in love with Daisy. Despite Daisy being at a much higher social class than he was determined to rise to her social class so he could be with her. So, he spent much of his time working hard and eventually became wealthy. After becoming wealthy, he tries to go for her again. And what he does is he throws these massive, expensive parties to hopefully one day attract Daisy to one of them so he can meet her. This is described in this quote by Jay Gatsby when he's having a discussion with Nick. "She didn't like it," he said immediately. "Of course she did." "She didn't like it," he insisted. "She didn't have a good time." He was silent, and I guessed at his unutterable depression. In this discussion, Gatsby talks about his disappointment when Daisy doesn't like his party. And then from that point on, he stops launching these large parties because Daisy's uninterested in them and lays off all his servants. This proves the fact that Gatsby went as far as to have huge parties just so he could get Daisy to come to one of them. Gatsby also once again showed his obsession when he went an entire night without sleeping just to make sure that Daisy wouldn't get harmed by Tom on the day they had fought. This was talked about in Chapter 7, when Nick told Gatsby, "You'd better come home and get some sleep." He shook his head. "I want to wait here till Daisy goes to bed. Good night, old sport." So I walked away and left him standing there in the moonlight watching over nothing. The fact that Gatsby goes out of his way and does so much just to get Daisy's attention, even spending years of his life working for wealth just to get with her, is truly showing how much he loves her and is obsessed with her, which is why Gatsby defines the theme of love and obsession. The second main theme in The Great Gatsby, dissatisfaction and idealization, is best connected with Daisy Buchanan. Daisy Buchanan is dissatisfied with the role of woman in society. This is evident in Chapter 1, where she states, in reference to her daughter, quote, "I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world. A little fool." What she means by this is that in her society, women are valued when they are ignorant, because they are not expected to do anything. And usually they're expected to just stay in the house and behave as housewives. So it isn't necessary for them to be intelligent. And plus, it is better if they live a simplistic lifestyle where they don't know what's going on around them. She also thinks that they should be beautiful because women are also valued for being beautiful, and that's how they get married. She thinks that it's best and ideal for her daughter to get married to a person of high social class in which they can live comfortably and in luxury. This is what she did. She married Tom, who was ideal to her because of his high social class. However, the truth is their marriage isn't really working out, and Tom is in fact cheating on her, which was shown in the same chapter by Jordan Baker when she states, quote, "Why?" she said hesitantly. "Tom's got some woman in New York. She might have the decency not to telephone at dinner time, don't you think?" Tom cheating on Daisy truly shows that despite their being high social class being ideal, it's not actually real, and that there are always issues at every social class. The third major theme, social class struggles and differences, is best represented by the character George Wilson. George Wilson is an impoverished man that resides between West and East Egg. He's married to his wife, Myrtle Wilson, who is very unfaithful to him because of his social class, as she prefers the higher class, specifically Tom Buchanan, who has a lot of wealth, and she can enjoy a lavish lifestyle if she hangs around with him. This is best discussed in the theme in Chapter 2, in which Nick and Tom talk about the situation. Tom states, quote, Terrible place, isn't it? Said Tom, exchanging a frown with Dr. Eckelberg. Awful. It does her good to get away. Doesn't her husband object? Wilson? He thinks she goes to see her sister in New York. He's so dumb he doesn't know he's alive. In this discussion, basically, Wilson is described to be very poor and uneducated, and it makes it very easy for Myrtle to leave him and go ahead and cheat with Tom. Tom gets to cheat on Myrtle because of his wealth, and Myrtle happily does so because George Wilson's social class is so low. Basically, in this story, if your social class is low, you can't live a very good life. Unlike today, where there's greater equality between classes, back then it was even worse. If you were part of this low social class, you were often berated and looked down upon, and were practically had no rights or say. And this is why George Wilson best represents the social class struggles and differences. The final theme, isolation and loneliness, is best portrayed through the character Nick Carraway. Nick Carraway starts off lonely when he first comes to the East, but eventually, thanks to the efforts of Tom and Daisy Buchanan, manages to meet Jordan and establish a relationship. However, by the end of the novel, he's forced to leave her because he needs to move west. And it's because of this, Nick ends up being lonely at the end of the story. In addition to this, Nick feels isolated because he was one of the few people that believed in Gatsby and was a close friend of his. In the end, he struggles to find people to come to Gatsby's funeral, and feels very much alone and isolated, as practically no one cares about him or his close friend. This is shown through when he says in chapter 9, but, quote, but all this part of it seemed remote and unessential. I found myself on Gatsby's side, and all alone. It is as if all the people that went to Gatsby's party had forgot about him, but Nick. And this is what makes Nick unique and isolated. It's because he's the only one that actually cared about Gatsby. And once Gatsby died, he practically had no friends left in the East that he was close to. It's because of this Nick is this center of loneliness and isolation in this book, and he often sat on the sidelines in many of the major scenes that occurred between Tom and Daisy, as well as Gatsby. He even states this himself in chapter 9 when he says, quote, but all this part of it seemed remote and unessential. I found myself on Gatsby's side and alone. So this is the main reason why Nick is the living symbol of the theme loneliness and isolation. So those were the 4 major themes in The Great Gatsby, best represented by 4 main characters. Thanks for watching.